Does decorating your library on a small budget feel overwhelming? We all want our space to be functional, but we also want it to be beautiful and a place where the kids love to come. In today's video, I'm going to share some ways that you can decorate your library on a budget. Let's go. If you work in a public school, you know that very often funds for the library are very small, if sometimes even non-existent. So in this video, I'm going to share some of the ways that I was able to decorate my library and make it a more inviting and functional space for my students. The simplest way to do that is with a printer and a laminator. If you have access to a laminator, that's awesome. But even having a really good printer can be so useful. When I first started in my elementary school, there were no signs at the ends of the bookcase where I had transferred all the nonfiction to. So I want my students to be independent, and so signage is very important. And I was able to go to janbrett.com, and she has really nice library signs for the Dewey Decimal System with her beautiful illustrations, and I printed out all of her library Dewey Decimal signs, and I laminated them and I taped them with packaging tape to the end of my bookcases. Most of them lasted for years. Sometimes the edges would curl. They really served a very important function, and they looked great as well. So thank you for that, Jan Brett. Just using your own printer to print signs is very useful and basically free. If you have any type of supply budget and you could order plastic sign holders, that would make them longer lasting as well. Although that adds to the budget, it makes them more permanent, especially if you can get sign holders that sit on a counter where you could change out the printed message. Is another inexpensive way to create signage in your library. One of the biggest ways that I saved money and increased the child friendliness of my library was by using cardboard. I used a lot of cardboard to create displays, to create permanent parts of my library. For example, when I first began in elementary school, I was showing a friend of mine who was a first grade teacher some of the pictures of my library. I had a long counter with a big slot for the book drop. So the students would put the books in the book drop and they would fall into a bin on the other side. A comment she made to me was that you should make the drop the mouth of a monster to make it more fun for the students. So I love that idea. I ran with it. And so I found one of my favorite monster book characters, and I used cardboard. I cut out the outline, and then just using marker, paint, and then a clear spray finish, I was able to create a monster for my book drop. Now, you could do this very easily as well. I did it by eye, but if you don't have confidence in your drawing abilities, you could always use an old-fashioned overhead projector and project an image onto a piece of cardboard or paper, trace it and cut it out. That's one way to do it. The cardboard itself is easy to get if you have access to a warehouse type store such as Costco, where they have big sheets of cardboard that they put between their pallets, or any warehouse or business in your community that could offer you free cardboard. I just would go to Costco and bring home cardboard all the time to use for my library projects. Not only did I create a fun book drop that lasted for many years, I also created signs. If you've ever seen like a pole that shows a lot of signs of places and locations pointing in every type of direction, I made signs like that for the poles outside of my library. For my middle school library, I used cardboard as a background and printed out book character faces that middle school students would be familiar with to put on top of the bookcase as well. So that's one way I used my printer. And then I used cut out cardboard to make it sturdy and last a long time. So on the same theme of recycled materials, I used things like newspaper, tin foil, masking tape to create small sculptures for my library that I used as decor and in lessons. In elementary school, I wanted to create a tray of green eggs and ham for the month of March when it was Dr. Seuss's birthday. And so I just scrunched up some newspaper and I wrapped it with masking tape until it looked like the shape of a ham to me. I also used flour and water and just kept coating it almost like a paper mache type project until it was dried hard. And I painted it green. I used black marker for the outline and a round piece of styrofoam for the tray. And I created a plate full of green eggs and ham. Also, I actually created, and I am not a sewer by any stretch of the imagination, but I got a piece of fleece from the fabric store cheaply and very roughly cut out the shape of Sam I Am from Green Eggs and Ham. And just using felt and a needle and thread, I made a very rustic and rough looking Sam I Am costume. And everything cost me probably, for everything, including the paint and all the supplies, less than $10. So very inexpensive, and I used it every year during the week of Dr. Seuss's birthday. And when I was not using the green eggs and ham, it was on top of one of the bookcases for display. When I went to the middle school level and I wanted to make a display for the playaways and the audiobooks that I had in the library for the students, I did the same thing with newspaper and tape and paint and just some flour and water, and I created a giant ear to put on my display near my playaways. I wanted the sections of the library to stand out even more for the students and catch their attention. So I did order these big cardboard letters to spell out the words fiction, nonfiction, biography, and they were about 80 cents each. And then I painted them myself and I just glued them to the tops of the bookcases. So something that you will find as a teacher, if you haven't taught before, is that very often teachers spend their own money on classroom supplies and decor. And so being a library teacher is no different. So if you are comfortable doing that, nobody wants to spend their whole paycheck, that's for sure. But there are times where you can invest just a couple of dollars and get a lot. If in creative ways you can get a lot for your money. Things that you might pay hundreds of dollars for out of a catalog, you could make yourself for pennies. So also on the lines of spending your own money, there are other places that I looked for decor and ways to decorate the library. When I took over my elementary library, there hadn't been anybody in there the year before. There were just 4 or 5 different substitute and short-term librarians that were in and out until they hired me to be the permanent librarian. So really I had a blank slate to work with. And one of the things that I did is I went to a lot of yard sales and garage sales and thrift stores. If I saw a book character stuffy at a yard sale for a quarter, I was buying it. I also bought books that way as well. If I saw a collection of Shel Silverstein for 50 cents each at a yard sale, I was spending my own money to get that. One of my greatest finds at a yard sale was literally the week before I started my elementary position, I found a big blue and green caterpillar at a yard sale, and he was so cute, and he was $1. And he just happened to look like the blue and green bookworm on the cover of Mr. Wiggles' Library, which is a book that I use to teach kindergartners about book care. So Mr. Wiggles became the library mascot for the kindergartners. They all met him in kindergarten, and they just knew him as the library mascot for the whole 6 years that they were my student. That might be a controversial topic, whether you're spending your own personal money on your library decor. You certainly don't have to do that. Our supply budget every year in elementary school was about $200, and those were the years that we got any supply budget at all. That is not going to buy much. That is going to buy you labels and tape and things that you need for book repair. It's not going to buy anything pretty or decorative in the library, and even things that are functional like signage. So all these ways that I've discussed are alternatives that cost little to no money. And the last suggestion that I have is, if there is a big ticket item, say you want a reading carpet over by the picture books for the children to sit down and read, you know in the catalog that is going to cost anywhere from $700 to $1,000. If you reach out to your parent-teacher organization, they might be thrilled to be able to provide that for you. So they do run fundraisers, and they have certain budgets, and they don't always have a lot of money. But if they do have the money, or if they want to fundraise for you and purchase that as a gift to the library, that's another great way to get decor and functional items for your library that may not be in your budget. And one last way is not only reaching out to the PTA, but you could reach out to your teachers and your faculty and staff in the building as well. If there are seasonal things that you would like to decorate the library with, and maybe you don't have any for holidays or winter, or even just plants, things like that, make yourself a wish list. Put it out to your building, because there might be teachers in the building or staff in the building that are looking to declutter their house and be more than happy to share those things with you or donate them to the library. Well, that about wraps it up for today. If you can think of any other ways that I haven't thought of to help decorate your library on a budget for little or no money, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. And as always, don't forget, support your local library, your independent bookstore, and your right to read.